Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Let's talk credit card debt for a minute. If you feel you're carrying too much of it, you're not alone. The average household in the U.S. carries over $8,000 in credit card debt. Ready for some good news? With a cash-out refinance from Quicken Loans, you can quickly and easily put some of the equity in your home to good use by paying off a lot of that high-interest credit card debt. A great way to take cash out is with our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.125%, APR 4.22%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN to learn how taking cash out with a 30-year fixed mortgage might be the right solution for you. And for a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rates subject to change. Pay 0.88% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Football represents something we are.
Football is like life. You gotta push.
Fantasy football is about proving that you are better than your friends.
Hold up.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Faceoff.
I'm gonna do what's best for the team.
Where fantasy meets reality.
Pure fantasy football nirvana.
And now your hosts.
Let the games begin.
Anthony Cervino and Michael Hauff.
Welcome back, everybody, to the FF Faceoff. This, of course, is where fantasy meets reality, and we are proudly brought to you by the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best in the world!
My name is Michael Hauff. You can follow me on Twitter at the FF Realist. My partner in crime is Anthony Cervino. He can be followed at the Real NFL Guru. Anthony, as I situate my chair, how's it going today?
Mike, I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, after getting home from a brutal day at work, I was very much looking forward to discussing a little bit of bounce back running backs, which is what we're going to do on today's show. A little bit of news that we're going to kind of breeze right through. But yeah, so looking forward to discussing running backs because it is a position that has some depth to it, if I'm not mistaken. Anthony, you agree with that notion?
Yeah, I mean, I actually just tweaked my fantasy football rankings last night, and I did it by tier.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a ton of depth, but there is a lot of variables in between each tier, you know, with the drop-offs and whatnot.
Of course. Well, we're going to get into a little bit of that today as we talk bounce back running backs. But before anything, let's get to a little public service announcement from his lordship.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
All right, guys, you know the drill. If you like today's episode and subscribe to the channel, please leave us a comment saying that you have subscribed. And once you're done, we will reply back to as many as we can to show our appreciation to you. And I always like to remind you that if you ever want to skip the news, the public service announcement, or anything else, or if you want to just jump to a certain segment or talking point, all you have to do is check out the description for the timestamps. And if you're using a desktop, you click on the timestamp, it will take you to where you want to go. However, on a mobile device or YouTube mobile, especially, the timestamps do not work. That is a YouTube issue, not an FF Faceoff issue. So please don't take it out on us. And of course, the timestamps, just because the link doesn't work, doesn't mean that they're useless. All you have to do is drag your podcast player bar or your video player bar to the time that you want to go to, and everybody wins. Mike?
There you go. And even the trolls win, because now we're done. See, so there you go. There's your public service announcement. Thank you very much from his lordship, Alfred Hayes. Anthony, really quick, let's get into a little trending topic of the day. And listen, if you're on Twitter, if you're in the fantasy football world, and if you are on Twitter, like I said, you are immersed in SFB9. The hashtag is everywhere. Scott Fishbowl 9 is ready to kick off soon. I believe the draft is in about, 2 weeks?
The 9th?
Yes, I believe so. That better be the day. We better double check that. We don't want to be late to the party because they did assign divisions yesterday and draft orders as well. Anthony, what division are you representing, and where are you picking?
I am picking from the number 1 slot in the Mega Man division.
Spoiler alert, Ezekiel Elliott's going number 1 in the Mega Man division.
Well,
probably. Maybe.
Well, I mean, it's Zeke, it's Barkley, or it's McCaffrey.
Yeah, well,
at least,
course.
You know.
I know, just every single draft I've ever done with you, if you've picked number 1. Just saying.
Oh.
Okay. All right. We'll see. Maybe Anthony will prove me wrong. We'll see. But anyway, I will be representing the Yoshi division. I'm picking 5th overall. So those names you mentioned, Anthony, the Ezekiel Elliott's, Saquon Barkley's, Christian McCaffrey's, I should not be getting them. If I get them, somebody did something wrong at the top.
Well, picking from the 5th, Mike, it wouldn't surprise me if one of the big 4 backs, with the 3 aforementioned running backs and Alvin Kamara, if one of them dropped to you at the 5th spot, because it wouldn't surprise me if we see Travis Kelce and or Pat Mahomes go in these early picks.
Well, if they do, I will be ready. So there you go. So, Anthony, now really quick before we get into the news, because the news we're going to breeze by. You talked about running backs at the 1st overall spot. So would you think that that's a mistake for somebody in the top 3 to go with Kelce or Pat Mahomes, given the point structure? Which, by the way, if you head to Scott Fish's site, which you can find on his Twitter bio there, you can head there and you can check out the scoring for this year. It's pretty interesting. Should be some high numbers, but yeah, Anthony, what do you think about that? Top 3 taking a tight end or a quarterback? You on board with that?
With Scott Fishbowl scoring formats, especially this one with the video game theme and the video game achievement tiers, I don't know if it would be a mistake. I mean, I remember 2 years ago, more so than last year in SFB, 7, I saw guys going like 4 tight ends to start the draft, going back-to-back quarterbacks. So you're going to see... you're going to go in with, if you go in with the strategy, prepare for it to explode, because people are going to draft any which way, because, you know, as much as I like to preach drafting for consistency, you kind of need to draft for the home run, because if you make it into the playoffs, it's all about big points.
Absolutely. Right. And of course, as we know, this all goes to a very great cause. Scott Fish is the best person, the nicest person in the fantasy football industry, hands down. So head over to his page, head to the website, make a donation, check out the very cool SFB9 shirts over on RotoWear, which I got to get myself onto. Anthony, have you bought a shirt yet?
No, I was actually going to buy one today, and all that I see is left is the SFB Sega logo, which I like, but I really hope they get more of the Mario 3 SFB9 logo in. That's the one I really want. And so I'm checking out RotoWear's Twitter and seeing if there's any posts about an additional, order or, coming in.
Well, there you go, folks. So check it out. And of course, again, all to a great cause. And thank you to Scott Fish, who puts up with quite a lot.
Absolutely.
Check out his Twitter timeline. My goodness. Patience of a saint. All right.
Ryan McDowell
Yeah.
is compiling Scott Fishbowl mock draft ADP. So you go to, what's his Twitter? Ryan, at Ryan MC, I believe, and you can check out, it's at Ryan MC23, and you can check out, I guess I'll have links and tweets posted about SFB9 ADP data.
There you go. All right. So with that, let's breeze through this news, Anthony. Jaguars third-round tight end Josh Oliver has shown good rapport, apparently, with quarterback Nick Foles during the off-season workouts. Anthony, I mean, that's all well and good from a fantasy football perspective. You look at this depth chart for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do you care about this headline?
I do.
Okay.
Because I don't have it in front of me, but I know Nick Foles targeted Eagles tight ends almost as much as Carson Wentz. Something like 7 targets a game to Ertz from Foles.
And Carson Wentz is one of the best quarterbacks ever, right, Anthony?
Well, don't put me in this spot. Not now.
Okay. Next time.
But yeah, I think the Jaguars tight end position is going to be busy. I know that they brought in Jeff Swaim from Dallas.
Yep.
But Oliver is getting a lot of offseason hype, and if you're in a dynasty league especially, you can get him for practically nothing in your rookie draft, or he might even last on waivers. The rookie tight ends that you can get on waivers, you can get an Oliver, you can get a Foster Moreau, Dawson Knox, Drew Sample. All these guys are practically free. And Oliver is creeping up my list right now who can make an immediate impact.
Well, there you go. So for your dynasty folks, yes, there's interest. All right. Speaking of rookies, Bengals rookie Jonah Williams has a bit of a shoulder injury, so he's going to miss the entire 2019 season. Quite a shame. But with that in mind, Cordy Glenn is going to move back to left tackle. There you go. It's just, sucks pretty much. That's what we chalk this up to.
I am one of the, you know how high I am on the Bengals.
Right.
I thought the Jonah Williams pick was going to do wonders for this team immediately, and now he is not going to be there at all this year. They're going to switch Cordy Glenn back, as you said. I think it's going to set this team back a little bit. All that said, I'm still going to buy these Bengals fantasy assets because most of them can be had at a value compared to their upside, with the exception of Joe Mixon.
Right.
Definitely, AJ Green.
I know.
Tyler Boyd.
I'm with you. I'm with you on the Bengals.
Andy Dalton you can have for free.
You really could, though. Yeah, but it is a shame, though, for the rookie. Very reminiscent of Isaiah Wynn last year, if you remember, drafted by the Patriots out of Georgia. He had the Achilles tear, different injury, but still. Here we go. Ravens tight end Hayden Hurst. We talked a little bit about some Ravens tight ends on Tuesday's show. There was reports he was questionable for training camp, but meanwhile, he has told 105.7, that's the Baltimore radio, that he's going to be good to go for camp. So, not much to delve in on here. We did talk about the Ravens tight ends on Tuesday's show. There is Mark Andrews also there. So that's actually a pretty decent mix at the tight end position. So keep an eye on it. We mentioned that Tuesday. Watch it evolve. Anthony, anything to mention on that, or can we move on?
No, we talked about this on Tuesday, and I'm still going to buy Mark Andrews until Hayden Hurst gives me a reason not to.
Right. Until he tells you it's time to play the game. ESPN's Dan Graziano, I apologize. He doesn't expect the Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott to receive a contract extension this offseason. Anthony, you're the Cowboys guy. We saved this for last for you. What do you got?
Smart move by the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones. I think waiting to pay him, considering he has this history of really stupid off-the-field issues, I think Jerry Jones is going to wait and see if he gets a suspension. I doubt he does, but you never know with the NFL. I also think, Jerry Jones is trying to get all of the leverage he can with all of these players that he has to pay. Maybe he wants to... I don't know. I don't know the reasoning behind it. I know that they wanted to try to get this done this offseason, but that's not happening now. You don't have to pay all these players. You have the franchise tag. So you have time to make a decision and maybe pay, Dak and Zeke and tag Amari, or, maybe Amari takes a team-friendly deal and you pay... Dak and Amari Cooper, and you franchise tag Zeke. You remember what the Cowboys did with DeMarco Murray a few years ago. He had that huge year, and they let him go.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be mighty interesting with, Amari Cooper wanting to shoot for 2,000 yards. I don't know how friendly of a contract he's going to want, but we'll see. That's for the Cowboys to worry about as we roll on here. But, Anthony, enough about Dallas Cowboys. And one thing's for sure, Ezekiel Elliott will not come up and bounce back running backs, but let's get to that right now. And now, to me, we'll start off with one that I feel like will probably be the most obvious. That would be David Johnson, who I feel like being stuck in the shackles of Mike McCoy's offense, it was so ugly and so bad at first that folks don't even realize that he still finished, number 10 overall among running backs, if I'm not mistaken, in half-point formats. Then again, though, he did have just two top 10 games in 2018. So that jammed you up quite a bit, especially in the early part of the season was not good. But listen, the grain of salt I feel like here, the moment Cliff Kingsbury got there, folks weren't too excited. But then the draft came. And then Kyler Murray came. Folks are a little more excited about the Cardinals in general, and that's turning folks' attention, I think, back to David Johnson. I think David Johnson definitely bounces back here. If there's any running back who can somehow crack that top 5, I think it could be David Johnson. I don't know if it happens, but among those guys who are bouncing back, I think he is a prime candidate to crack that top 5. Anthony, what are your thoughts here on David Johnson? Do you buy into him bouncing back?
Yeah, I am going to buy into David Johnson buying back. A few years ago, he was going as the number 1 running back off the board for a reason. A lot has changed since then. We saw a lot of bad last year, and I think this offense has a chance to do a complete 180, whether you want to talk about Cliff Kingsbury wanting, what did he say? He wanted to set the NFL record for most plays run.
Yes.
The Cardinals last year, they ranked 28th in team run plays. I think we are going to see a little bit more balance from the Arizona Cardinals. It's an air raid philosophy, which means David Johnson is going to be heavily used in a passing game, a role that we are used to seeing from him. Last year, 76 targets, which was good for 11th amongst running backs. There's room for growth for David Johnson, especially comparing to last year's numbers.
And let's not forget, by the way, I know fantasy analysts or experts or what have you have a tendency to do this, and I understand 2016 is a long time ago. But given the fact that he was injured in week 1 of 2017, and then he ran into the gunfire that was the Mike McCoy offense in 2018, you have to remember that if he's not breaking his wrist and if he's not stuck in McCoy's offense, we've seen what he can do in 2016. He can be a top running back, and he can win you a fantasy football championship. He is definitely a guy to buy into. But I also have a feeling that if you want him, of course, you're paying a hard price for him because he's still listed as, late first round on that ADP, Anthony?
Yes.
I believe so. So there you go.
But David, I have him ranked as my RB5 right now.
Right.
The Cardinals, in terms of game script, they were the worst team for a running back to be playing for in terms of game script.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's why we saw a regression from David Johnson more so than anything else is they couldn't get anything going on offense.
Right. And again, even though he finished 10th, I think when we talk about bouncing back here for David Johnson, we're talking about bouncing back from a consistency standpoint. So you won't have those, weeks and weeks where you get absolutely nothing out of him. So there you go. Don't be afraid. Next running back will be Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings. Things got off a little bit slow for Dalvin, and which was understandable given that he had the knee injury during his rookie year. He turned it on late, though. Late there in the season, he had a couple of top 10, top 15 games. Anthony, are you a guy who's going to be buying back into Dalvin Cook?
It's tough, Mike, because I did a show during your hiatus, and I was comparing Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook and all the knocks on Leonard Fournette with injuries. And Dalvin Cook averages 11.1 fantasy points per game in 15 career games. Whereas, and we'll talk about Leonard Fournette in a few minutes, Leonard Fournette averages 13.9 in 21 games. And the same amount of opportunity. It's actually Leonard Fournette who has played more games. In 2017, when Fournette played in his rookie year around 13 games, I believe, he finished as the RB8. Dalvin Cook, what he playing 10 games last year? I don't think he cracked the top 25.
Yeah. So, well, all right. So here's the thing.
Dalvin Cook played in 11 games and finished as the RB30 in PPR.
Yeah. And half point 29.
And I'm not anti Dalvin Cook.
Right.
I just think that if you are going to knock Leonard Fournette, a lot of the same should go on to Dalvin Cook, because it's not only these big, substantial injuries. He's also had a little bit of a history of these small tissue injuries, like with his shoulder, I believe, dating back to college.
40 receptions last year, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 2 touchdowns rushing. I'd imagine we're going to get a couple more touchdowns there, especially on the rushing end. I like Dalvin Cook to bounce back, but bounce back to a certain extent. I don't think he's going to be anybody that's really going to, put you over the top. I mean, right now, he's got a mid-second round ADP. Is that something you want to invest in Dalvin Cook right now if you're drafting a team today?
5th pick in the 2nd round, according to the Fantasy Football World Championship ADP.
Right.
And he's at the 4th pick in the 2nd round at Fantasy Football Calculator. And if you look at the backs that are going around him in the 2nd round, you have a chance with Mixon going with the 12th pick in the 1st. To get Mixon, you have a shot to get, James Conner, Todd Gurley's going right behind him. Damian Williams is the guy at that pick. I would rather reach a little bit and take a risk getting Damian Williams, who I believe is going to be the workhorse in the Chiefs' offense.
So what are we classifying Dalvin Cook as then? Because we seem a little bit – do we not think he's going to bounce back?
I think he'll bounce back if he can stay on the field.
Okay.
Because, Gary Kubiak is going to try to run the ball and add his wrinkles into that offense. And they also want to run the ball and establish the run to get Kirk Cousins out of the pocket for the play-action pass.
Right. Yeah, and I think now that this injury is officially in the rear view, I do think we see a bounce back. I just temper expectations.
I don't like the ADP. I don't like the ADP.
I don't like the ADP.
That's my
either.
knock on Dalvin Cook.
Right, because if he's coming up from 29 to, say, wherever, I have 29.5 point, you had 30 and full point. If he's coming up, however far he's coming up, I don't think that's going to warrant that draft pick. So, there you go. Proceed with caution with Dalvin Cook. Not as confident there as I would be with, say, a David Johnson. Up next is the recently mentioned Leonard Fournette, who we'll talk about. Listen, Anthony, I know you're a Leonard Fournette guy, so I'm going to let you take the start of this, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. But why don't you talk a little bit about Leonard Fournette?
When comparing Fournette and Cook, we just talked about that. I'm more inclined to wait and maybe take a receiver in the 2nd round and then go get a Leonard Fournette if I'm going to take any one of these backs almost a full round later. And you can make the case that Leonard Fournette is a little bit more valuable to the Jaguars offense and their success than Cook.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette also, like I said, 13.9 fantasy points per game in 21 games. He balls out anytime he is on the field. The issue with him is getting him on the field, whether it's injuries or the dumb mistakes off the field. He was 34th in carries and 29th in red zone touches, despite only playing in 8 games last year. 25 red zone touches in 8 games. 17th, he had 8 goal line carries.
Right.
In 8 games, and he was 4th in dominant rating at Player Profiler in 8 games. Leonard Fournette balls out, like I said, anytime he's on the field. The Jaguars had said that they want to utilize him more in the passing game, and I think there is room to grow in the passing game. Ezekiel Elliott, let's talk about him. In his rookie year, he wasn't exactly blowing up as a receiver, and as his career progressed, we are seeing Ezekiel Elliott emerge. I don't know if Leonard Fournette is ever going to produce as Ezekiel Elliott did last season, but I think there is room to grow for Leonard Fournette as a receiver. I just want to see the guy on the field, because when he is on the field, he really is a dominant player.
Right, and I think it's a fair statement to say that he could grow in the passing game. And yeah, clearly you're not talking about Elliott numbers of 77 receptions, 567 yards. But yeah, you could definitely make some ground. But yeah, you mentioned Anthony. To me, I get it. He does a lot of dumb things. People want to focus on laughing on the sideline or not paying his parking violations. But to me, the biggest thing with him is staying healthy. I mean, we talk about he didn't play a full season last year. He had the issues very early on. Even if you go back to college, in college his senior year, he missed 6 games. The same ankle injury he kept re-injuring. Turned out after the season was over, he admitted that it was a high ankle sprain. But that's my concern with a guy like Leonard Fournette. That's why I think I would probably wait on him. But clearly, he's going to bounce back. He finished 40th in half-point formats. Rookie year, he finished 8th. So while I talk about David Johnson being a guy that I think he could crack that top 5, I don't think Leonard Fournette's going to finish in that top 10. I don't know if he can get back to that point. I think he's just outside looking in when the season ends. But I think with Nick Foles, I think they're going to be a little more comfortable relying on the pass than they were with, say, Blake Bortles.
I don't know, Mike. See, I don't know about that.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to air it out.
416 times. They were the 12th. They ran the ball the 12th most out of all the NFL teams. I still believe they are going to pound the run with Leonard Fournette, and then let Nick Foles make the plays that Blake Bortles couldn't.
Right, and I want to make that clear when I say they're going to be a little more comfortable to pass the ball with Foles than they will with Bortles. I'm not trying to say all of a sudden we're going to see the 49ers from the 80s out there. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just simply saying that I think that they'll be a little more comfortable to pass. They may not have to lean on Leonard Fournette in certain situations that they won't want to. I still think he's getting the goal line work. I mean, you read off the numbers. I think he's still going to get the goal line work, and I think that's going to be your meat and potatoes of his scoring. So he'll bounce back, but again, when we mentioned bounce back, we had to look at the ADPs and where is he? Late second round, early third round? Yeah, Fournette.
Almost a full round after Cook. Fifth pick in the second, and Fournette you're looking at, second in the third to, fifth in the third.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're looking at it that way, I'd rather have Fournette over Cook. And
they are identical when looking at sportsinjurypredictor.com. Dalvin Cook has a 57.6% chance of injury in 2019, and Leonard Fournette has a 57.5% injury risk. Yeah. And that's at sportsinjurypredictor.com.
Oh, all right. So there you go. So there's that. Moving on from that, we'll move to another running back who was injured last year. We're not used to seeing him injured that often, though, that being Devonta Freeman of the Atlanta Falcons. Listen, I mean, to me, I like this with his ADP. I think he bounces back, and I think he plays well. I mean, we're talking about a guy who finished top 10 in 2016 and 2017. I think the worst he finished in the last 3 years, between 2017 and 2015, worst he finished was 13th. I think he bounces back. I think he could jump ahead of 13th among running backs. I don't know if we're ever gonna see. I think people, and I think that I'm not saying this is a knock on Devonta Freeman. I think because of competition at the position, I think folks are kind of forgetting a little bit about Devonta Freeman and how consistent he was prior to the injury last year. You take a look at those 3 years. I mean, there was even that 1 year, 2015, when he was winning people, or 2016, he was winning people fantasy football championships. Top 10 back-to-back years. I mean, what's changed? I mean, they threw a ton last year because, like we mentioned on Tuesday's show, they had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and they had to play a lot of catch-up, which also, I think, hurt Tevin Coleman's value, who we'll get to in a little bit. I think with a healthy defense, I think they can get back to obviously still throwing. Matt Ryan's going to throw the ball.
The Falcons only ran the ball 350 times, 30th most or third least.
Right, and that number's going to go up. There's no reason for that number to not go up now.
No, because the defense is going to be better, and they are going to be playing from better situations.
Right. The only thing that I'm going to say about this, though, with Devonta Freeman, it won't be exactly like the Shanahan days of all those receptions. I don't know if we can count on all those receptions to come in, but I think he bounces back here, and I think he does well for you from an ADP standpoint. Listen, if he ends up being my second running back towards the end of the third round, I'm okay with that.
I can buy into Freeman depending where his ADP is at and depending where people are drafting him. I think a player that is flying under the radar, we don't hear a peep, is about Ito Smith. Are people forgetting that, the Falcons like Ito Smith? They like how quickly he grasped the offense last year. He was thrust into a pretty prominent role.
Yeah.
When Freeman went down.
I mean, Freeman only played in 4 games, so.
I think people are kind of underselling Ito Smith a little bit here. You're saying you believe he can be a top 10 running back again. I just don't see it. I still think he'll finish right in line to where he is being drafted. I just don't know if he has any more of those gigantic years, especially in a deep, running back position, as we talked about at the top of the show.
If it's because of a deep position, sure, but let's not forget he's only 27 years old. He's not exactly his best days are behind him. And just to backtrack, because I was mixing up my years there, 2015 he finished as the number 1 running back. 2016 he finished number 6, and then 2017 he finished as 13th. So that's all half-point scoring, the official half-point scoring of the FF Faceoff, as far as I'm concerned. But I say he bounces back. Anthony, I think we could find a way to make a bet about this at some point. We'll find a way. But the one thing, just to respond to your Ito Smith talk, I think we can credit that to what we talked about just before with Devonta Freeman, was that the Falcons, what you just said, they were 30th in rushing attempts last year?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that kind of takes away from any kind of sex appeal that the Falcons' backfield used to have. So I think if it hurts Freeman, I think it hurts Ito Smith.
That's fair.
And I just think that, as long as we're talking about him, do you have Ito Smith's ADP up anywhere? I'm trying to pull that up here.
6th pick in the 10th round in PPR leagues. I'm using PPR.
Okay. 6th pick in the 10th.
And those rushing attempts are going to go up because Dirk Cutter is going to want to ground and pound the football a little bit, as we saw in Tampa Bay.
Right.
I mean, they just kept committing to Peyton Barber.
Yeah. I agree. I think both running backs play well in this offense, but Freeman specifically, I think he's a bounce back candidate. Anthony, we will find a bet somehow, some way, because I am high on Devonta Freeman this year. Anthony, next up is Aaron Jones, and I'll let you kind of take the lead on this, because also I will just mention this before I put it your way. Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, there was a report that came out today that he wants running backs more involved in the passing game in 2019. That should give folks a little bit of reason to be excited about the Packers backfield. Anthony, how excited are you about Aaron Jones specifically?
Well, if you talk about a player that has the possibility to crack the top 10 or 12 into that RB1 tier, I think Aaron Jones has to be in the conversation. The Packers finished 32nd team run plays, but they were one of the best run-blocking offensive lines. Pro Football Focus graded them at the end of 2018 as the 7th best. They were 5th in run-blocking efficiency. Aaron Jones played in 50% of the snaps. However, he only played in 12 games, and in those 12 games, he finished as the PPR RB 24. So you have to ask yourself why, despite missing the 4 games, I mean, we see these explosive players like Kareem Hunt, who played in 11 games before a suspension, still finished as an RB1. James Conner finished as the RB6 in 13 games, so it's possible to get into that tier while playing in only, 12 or 13 games. So what's missing with Aaron Jones? And I think the work in the red zone and the work in the goal line, he was 38th in red zone touches, only had 20 of them, 37th in goal line carries with 3. So that means that work is probably going to Jamal Williams. Is this going to go up? Is this the year we finally see the Green Bay Packers fully commit to one running back, and that running back should be Aaron Jones? I mean, he finished 9th amongst running backs in yards per touch, averaged 5.9 yards per touch, fourth in true yards per carry with 5.1, an actual 5.5 yards per carry. This is an explosive running back running behind a talented offensive line who could run the ball. You have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback with all those weapons, so the defense has to commit to stopping Aaron Rodgers, and those lanes should be wide open for one, Aaron Jones.
They have, again, with the quarterback, like you just mentioned, they have the opportunity to utilize and capitalize on Aaron Jones when, what you just mentioned. Defenses are going to play to the quarterback. Listen, it's all well and good what you said about Aaron Jones. I want to ask you then, just because they're awfully close there in half-point ADP, Devonta Freeman or Aaron Jones?
If you're trying to make a bet,
well, it sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies.
I would take that bet.
You want to take that bet?
I would take that bet.
We will take that bet, and I will make a poll. We'll put the poll up for the fine Twitter folks, and they can also weigh in on this. We'll make a Facebook poll as well. Why not?
Here's right here. Jamal Williams had 16 red zone touches.
Yeah.
And Aaron Jones had 20. Big issue right there.
Yeah.
Those numbers have to go up, and if they do, Aaron Jones is going to be on the, in the fast lane to the RB1 tier in 2019.
Okay. Listen, I'm not hating on Aaron Jones. I don't know if while I think Jones is the better back, I don't think that they just stick with one back there in Green Bay. I just don't see it. Just quite simply, I don't see it. So I don't see Aaron Jones being that type of back this year. It's not a knock on him, but I'm going to go with Devonta Freeman over Aaron Jones.
Oh, see, I made Lewis a bet.
They're going to commit to him solely enough. I think you see more action with the running backs this year. I believe that headline when I read that. You read a lot of headlines here at this point of the season. A lot of it's just grasping for straws, guys trying to lose body fat and such. But I believe Matt LaFleur when he says he wants to utilize running backs in the passing game, and that will help Aaron Jones, but not enough to pass Devonta Freeman.
What is it with Green Bay running backs and losing weight?
Oh, I was reading that about a different running back. You read that about a Green Bay running back?
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about Jones. No, who are you talking
about? I just saw a headline today. There was one running back, I forget who, but he was losing body fat. So, like everybody's doing great. Everybody's awesome. Everybody's losing body fat. Everybody's never looked better during the late June month here. So there you go. Anthony, next up, and by the way, we'll put that bet out for you guys to vote on. So next up is Kenyan Drake. This is a guy who dominated a lot of our podcast talk last year. I was a guy who was very much down on Kenyan Drake. I took a lot of heat for this, mainly because, again, it was his head coach, Adam Gase, which we discussed a little bit on Tuesday's show. Adam Gase is now gone. Chad O'Shea is now the offensive coordinator here with the Miami Dolphins, that being the former wide receivers coach for the Patriots. Anthony, you're a Kenyan Drake guy. I think I'm warming up to Drake a little bit. He did finish as the 17th best back last year in half-point formats.
14th in full point.
14th in full point. Anthony, why don't you tell me why you're buying into Kenyan Drake?
Kenyan Drake has the pieces to be, the closest thing to the Dolphins having a 3-down back. He's explosive. He can catch. He can run. What's missing here, and you said it yourself, he finished, RB 17 and a half point, RB 14 in full point PPR. He did that while only getting 7.5 carries per game. There's a new regime, a new offensive coordinator coming from New England. I believe they are going to try to commit to the run a little bit more, especially with these, it's not the best quarterback tandem with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen. So I think we can see a lot more Kenyan Drake than we're used to. I mean, what's behind him? Kalen Ballage, Mark Walton, Myles Gaskin? Kenyan Drake should easily dominate this backfield in touches. He played in 61.3% of the Dolphins' snaps last year, which was 16th best amongst running backs, but his touches didn't really seem to follow through. 12th in targets, 12th in receiving yards, 13th in receptions, but 39th in carries, 34th in rushing yards, and 18th 20th in total touchdowns with 8.
Right. And listen, that was a lot of my concern with Kenyan Drake because of the coaching staff and because Gase in the past, again, we'll see what he does with Lev Bell here. He's a little bit of a different back, but Gase never really wanted to commit to just one running back, and you saw that last year with Drake. But Drake did, to his credit, defy some of those odds, but he didn't. See, here's my thing, Anthony. I know we need to kind of – it's not going to be a carbon copy of last year because we're getting a completely new coaching staff here. Do we see, like, for example, the receiving numbers, 53 receptions, 477 yards, 5 touchdowns? Can he keep that going? Because I think that touchdown number may come down. But to me, if he gets more rushing scores, really how far is he bouncing back exactly?
I think Kenyan Drake has legitimate RB1 upside, back tier RB1 upside. He only had 1 goal line carry last year. Yeah, that there, crazy. He can pick up if he gets a couple of more, goal line and red zone touches. You're talking about an increase for a couple of scores just on the touchdown range.
Okay. I'm basically like, it's like we're saying, because he didn't get a lot of work, but he defied the odds and he played well. If he gets the work and plays well, I don't know how far he's bouncing up is what I'm trying to say.
If you look at the top 20 running backs.
Right.
It was only James White and Tarek Cohen. And then there's Kenyan Drake, who had fewer than 150 touches? Carries.
Right. Yeah.
And those 2 running backs had, 94 and 99 carries respectively. Drake 120. But those 2 running backs also had, 20 and 30 and 40 more targets than Kenyan Drake had. If you give Kenyan Drake the touches, he will produce.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I want to make that clear, too. When I didn't like him last year, that was more in part, again, for the coaching staff, not Kenyan Drake. I think we see a more consistent Kenyan Drake and not just him defying the odds all season long. So. And Anthony, I would have liked to make a bet about Kenyan Drake, but I can't find one right now. So we'll get back.
And talking about yards per touch, 5.8 yards per touch.
Yeah.
60 evaded tackles, good for 13th amongst running backs, and a 34.7 juke rate at Player Profiler. He was a top 10 running back, number 7 in that category. He's a playmaker. He's elusive. They just need to commit. And I believe that this new regime will commit to Kenyan Drake a hell of a lot more than Adam Gase did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down. That's why I'm on board here with Kenyan Drake this year. I just don't know how much farther we're going to see him bounce up. But ADP now.
Played in all 16 games in each of the past 2 years.
Yeah. No, yeah. So he's reliable too. Yeah. I have Fantasy Football Calculator up here currently. So in half-point formats, I have what is he going? Right there in the 5th round right now. 3rd pick of the 5th round.
That's a steal. That's a steal.
Yeah. So we're talking about a player that we think could bounce back and has a very nice ADP, unlike some of the other guys we mentioned at first. So
in the mocks I've been doing, he's going in the 4th.
Okay.
I will say that. A month ago, I was getting him in the 5th round. That's not happening anymore.
And by the way, wherever you're getting your ADP information, just a friendly fantasy tip. I mean, again, it's June. It's the last week of June. These ADPs are going to change. They're going to fluctuate, whether there's injuries, whether there's hype, so forth. So make sure you stay on top of that. And again, as we told you in the last episode, we're just going to always tell you this now. ADP is not gospel. Right, Anthony?
Absolutely not.
Do not live and die with ADP. Next running back we're going to talk about is a running back who found a new home this year, being now a member of the Baltimore Ravens. Anthony, he was suspended for the first 4 games, but after that, I mean, he only had 2 top 10 performances. There was that first game bridged right in between his suspension and the bye week. I think it was either Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. If you remember, he came out swinging, and Alvin Kamara owners were in a panic, but it didn't translate after the bye week. Again, just 2 top 10 performances, But he has a new home. And you know what, Anthony? I mentioned a lot that the Baltimore has a real issue with committing to one running back. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Mark Ingram gets a majority of the work. I really do. I will find a bet to make in regards to carries and Baltimore Ravens running backs. Mark Ingram will have his fair share of runs here, and I think he could handle it. Listen, he was splitting with Alvin Kamara because Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara. He's one of the best backs in football. He doesn't have that in Baltimore. So I think he's definitely a bounce-back candidate, especially from finishing 29th last year with the 4-game suspension. But we talked about guys who missed games and still managed to finish, top 10 or what have you. So, Anthony, you don't seem so excited about Mark Ingram, though. You got problems with Mark Ingram?
I don't know. I'm very uneasy. Ninth pick in the 4th round in PPR, and he's sandwiched in between Philip Lindsay and Kenyan Drake, who we just talked about. I'm going Drake 100% of the time over Mark Ingram.
Okay.
I'm a Justice Hill believer. I believe Justice Hill is going to be an impact player for the Baltimore Ravens, and that could come at the expense of Mark Ingram, especially if Mark Ingram looks like the player that he looked like last year after that first big game, and then he fell off the radar. At this time of the year last year, we were going back and forth with what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara, what's going to happen with his touches once Ingram's suspension is over. And Alvin Kamara just continued to control that backfield, and sure, he lost a little bit to Ingram, but nothing substantial to what we expected. Ingram's 29 years old, right?
Yeah.
This is a 29-year-old running back we're talking about. I understand he just got the deal, but there is that cliff.
So we'll see. We'll see.
I believe he's a little bit more risky than his ADP suggests. Are you buying into him?
Well, when you mentioned guys like Kenyan Drake, no, I'll take Drake over Ingram. We won't be able to find a bet there. So, do I think I think he bounced. See, and this is a problem that we're running into. We ran into it a little bit earlier. Do I think he can bounce back from last year? Yes, but I don't love his ADP either. I'm not in love with it either. You've got Kenyan Drake's going behind him. Chris Carson. I do Chris Carson over Mark Ingram too. No? Or does that get a little close to you?
Yeah, that gets close because of Rashad Penny, who I'm buying into just a little bit more than I was last year.
And
I still think that could be, that's going to be Carson's backfield, but if Penny gets hot, Pete Carroll's going to ride the hot hand.
And by the way, remember that as we talk about these running backs, we keep mentioning Kenyan Drake's name. He's behind guys like Chris Carson and Mark Ingram. So keep that in mind. Anthony, next running back we will talk about is...
Before we move on from Mark Ingram, I'd like to talk about these red zone and end zone touches. Mark Ingram, 12 games, had 29 red zone touches, 25th amongst running backs, and 11 goal line carries, which was 6th best at the position. So if the Baltimore Ravens are in scoring position inside the 10-yard line, it's going to be Mark Ingram's ball.
All right, there you go. Next up, we're going to talk about Tevin Coleman, now of the San Francisco 49ers. Anthony, this is a running back, and we've had some reversals here of opinions on players as we've podcast together for a couple of years now. This is one where we've kind of switched here. I am now in favor of Tevin Coleman. Not only do I think he can bounce back, but I also like his ADP, which is going right like mid to late 6th round right now. You remember when Jerick McKinnon signed with the Niners last year and there was all that hype before he tore his knee? He had an ADP that was like up in the 3rd round. Now you're getting Tevin Coleman, who a lot of people are talking about. What's coming out right now is that he will be the top Niners running back, or at least that's the goal. That's for the scheme of the offense. So now you're telling me, and listen, I know it sounds cliche. I know it sounds lazy, but the proof is there. We talked about Devonta Freeman earlier. Remember when Kyle Shanahan was over there? It was gold. And I'm not saying we're going to have Tevin Coleman here be a top 10 running back. That's not what I'm suggesting. So, but what I am suggesting is that there's something to that. This running back will be able to produce in this system. I love me some Tevin Coleman this year, especially at that ADP. I will take him at that ADP. I mean, there's a couple of guys in front of him. You want to go Lamar Miller, James White, Darius Geis. I go Tevin Coleman immediately over any one of those guys.
He's got to puke. He's got to
immediately.
puke. He's got to He's got to puke.
And by the way, I think we're asking him to bounce back because really, when you look at his finishes last couple of years, he's finished right there in that 18 to 20 range for the last 3 years or so. Really, I think when we're asking him to bounce back, or if he can, I think it's because a lot of folks felt like when Devonta Freeman went down and the contract year was on the horizon, that this was the time for Tevin Coleman to shine last year. And he ended up doing that. He only had 2 top 10 games, which, by the way, was bookended by 5 straight games outside the top 20. So he left you hanging for a long time. I think that's where we're asking him, can he bounce back? And I think he does.
I think, the talent is there. My issue is the 49ers backfield. It's a lot more crowded. Last year it was McKinnon and Breida. And it was really McKinnon. And now almost, a year later, you have Breida, who looked good last year, Mostert, who's a special teams player and looked good when he had his running back opportunities. You have McKinnon, who has the contract capital and all the hype from last year people forgetting about. And now Tevin Coleman. There is just so many. Sure. Tevin Coleman's getting the hype.
Honestly, I think we've gotten a little carried away with talking about how crowded the 49ers backfield is. I get it. Yes, it's crowded.
But it is, and it's also cliche to say, but I mean...
Yeah. But I think we're only led to believe how crowded it is because we were put in that position last year when Jerick McKinnon went down and Tevin Coleman wasn't on this team.
What if they were all RB3s when it's all said and done?
That's not going to, no. Mostert, no.
I'm not Mostert, but Breida, McKinnon, and Coleman could be looking at RB3s.
We talked about on this show, we talked about on Tuesday that Breida could, we figure that Breida would be the guy because we mentioned Mostert won't be a healthy scratch because he plays special teams. He's too valuable there. It more than likely won't be McKinnon, and it won't be Tevin Coleman, which, by the way, just mention, if you're worried about who's getting paid and contracts and stuff, both have very team-friendly contracts. So it's not like San Francisco is in a position where they have to give one guy carries. I don't think Breida is going to matter as much as people think. I think he's going to produce. I think he's going to have games where he does something, but I don't think that you can really – I'm not expecting a lot out of Matt Breida. Not enough to hurt Tevin Coleman here, no. And I think Tevin Coleman finishes better than he has ever. Again, I mentioned last 3 years, right in that 18 to 20 range. Oh, he'll finish above that. He's not top 10. We're going to look at him right around that 15, 14 range. 15.
So you're taking Tevin Coleman over Lamar Miller?
Yes.
That's tough. I like Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller has been pretty consistent.
Sure, I'll take that bet.
But that was in his 6 touchdowns, something like that, in each of the past, how many years? 4 or 5 years.
Do you want to take that bet?
His 2 worst seasons were years where he missed 2 games. Yeah, do I want to take the bet? Tevin Coleman versus Lamar Miller.
Yeah. Half-point formats, by the way.
I don't know. I don't know if I can do it.
You brought it up.
I know, but it's very close.
Come on, guy. You just told me Tuesday's show we got to make more bets. I'm throwing bets at you left and right. What are you doing?
I don't know. We might have to revisit a Tevin Coleman Lamar Miller bet.
Why
last year,
we're here now.
I made a lot of bad bets last year. I made a lot of bad bets, and I would like to redeem myself a little bit.
So what you're saying is that's a bad bet.
Not bad, but I don't know.
So they make the bet.
I don't know.
I don't understand. What is this? What are we doing? I know we got to talk about Ronald Jones, but I mean, like, what are we doing?
I don't know.
So we're not making the bet.
Let's make the bet.
All right, there you go.
I can't. Let's make the bet. So Miller,
you degenerate! I knew I'd get you. There you go.
Versus Coleman.
Yes, and we'll put up a poll for that as well. We'll put up a poll for that tomorrow, though. We'll get the other poll at first. All right, here we go. Next up, and listen, we're going to be kind of brief with him because again, we did talk about him on Tuesday's show. So if you go to Tuesday's show, the previous show, which of course you can always do, never enough fantasy football information. We talked a little bit about Ronald Jones here of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously had a rookie year to forget last year. Barely used. But, Anthony, given what's going on in the backfield and with the depth chart, I should say, and given the fact that they didn't make any additions, we wanted them to add TJ Yeldon. We wanted them to add Le'Veon Bell. We wanted them to go for Duke Johnson, which still yet at this point hasn't been done. But Ronald Jones could potentially bounce back here. I mean, it won't take much. Anthony, how comfortable would you be, though? And I think I asked this Tuesday, so forgive me, but we got him, slated for the 8th round right now, early 8th round, 4th pick of the 8th round. Is that somewhere you'd be comfortable, depending on your roster construction, taking a run at Ronald Jones?
Depending on roster construction and if Jordan Howard or maybe a Kareem Hunt is still there, right. The same hat I would hang on Ronald Jones. I would take the similar approach as I did with Peyton Barber, assuming they're just going to get a boatload of opportunities. So it would be an opportunity-driven pick and kind of just hope they do something with it.
To me, Ronald Jones he's not a lottery ticket because lottery tickets would suggest that if you hit, you're winning at all. He's like a scratch off. He's like a $5 scratch off. And I think he may be able to get you a little bit of something.
Not even a $10 one. He's $5 scratch off.
He's $5. Based on that rookie year, he's $5. Yeah. But seriously though, I do think he can bounce back. Especially, listen, if preseason closes and if they haven't made any other additions to running back, then why not Ronald Jones? It's not the same coaching staff. Bruce Arians may believe in Ronald Jones. Perhaps maybe that's why he didn't look to add all these other running backs. So this is something, while I'm not ready to plant my flag just yet on Ronald Jones, I'm definitely keeping a very close eye on what goes on there in Tampa Bay. Because that's the other thing. Not a lot of people are paying attention to Ronald Jones. You ask the average fantasy football fan about Ronald Jones, they won't even want to have a discussion about him. Because they'll just say, oh, he was terrible. He's terrible. I think there's something there. Anthony, you wanted to close out the show by discussing... We already discussed the crowded backfield there in San Francisco. You want to talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills, right?
Yeah, a little bit of news. TJ Yeldon told the press that he is expecting, and I quote, heated competition in the backfield.
Right.
Which is no surprise considering they brought in Yeldon, they brought in Gore, they have LaShawn McCoy, they have Marcus Murphy, and they also, drawing a blank here, who am I missing? Devin Singletary. I think I brought him up. How much faith do you have in LaShawn McCoy? Because I still think LaShawn McCoy has one more pretty good year left. He's never going to be the same player from, his early Buffalo days or his Philly days, but I still think he has one productive fantasy football, maybe, RB2 year left in him. The Bills upgraded their offensive line in the draft. They also brought in Lee Smith from Oakland, who was one of the best run-blocking tight ends in the league. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. Are you taking a shot on LaShawn McCoy, who was going right after Ronald Jones, 5th pick in the 8th round?
I don't know.
Because he has, kind of sneaky sleeper bounce back written all over him.
He does, but then
there's the backfield.
Crowded.
Yeah.
Like, that's a crowded backfield. That's a crowded backfield. Because San Francisco, they're talking about healthy.
What, because they have Frank Gore? Your boy?
Don't mess with the inconvenient truth.
That makes him crowded?
No.
That makes it crowded? That makes it more crowded than San Francisco because you have a 90-year-old Frank Gore?
I'm waiting. Are you done yet?
I'm just, what? How was that more crowded than the 49ers because of Frank Gore?
Are you done speaking? Okay, thank you. Because they invested a draft pick. They also added TJ Yeldon. They added Frank Gore, and LaShawn McCoy is still there. So they've made additions that they're plunging in there. San Francisco, we had Matt Breida. We had Raheem Mostert, but we had them by force because Jerick McKinnon was out for the whole year. So we were fed a heavy load there of Matt Breida as long as he wasn't limping off the field. I think this is a crowded backfield. They made additions. They plugged additions into here. And don't mess with Frank Gore. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. First ballot, Anthony.
Okay.
And no, I'm not just saying that because of Frank Gore. I'm saying that because I think TJ Yeldon, obviously, I think he's going to eat a lot of the pass catching as well. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of that out of McCoy. So, like, what's there going to be for McCoy to do? And I'm not saying that's a backfield to watch, man. Then there's the other idea is do they cut one of these guys? And I know I love Frank Gore to death, but listen, 36 years old. Do they cut him?
Is there a possibility of LaShawn McCoy, who's in the contract year? Do they, is he a player that could be on the move? Let's say if Damian Williams doesn't work out. Let's say Damian Williams gets hurt, knock on wood, because I have a ton of Damian Williams stock, but is LaShawn McCoy a player that can possibly end up in Kansas City should anything go, haywire in that backfield?
Right. I think that's something you have to keep in mind because he's 30 years old. You can't deal Frank Gore at 36. You could deal LaShawn McCoy at 30. Maybe, just maybe. I know folks will hate this when I say this. Maybe, just maybe. What about the Rams, maybe? You want to give Todd Gurley you don't want to. You have to because he's not going to be able to run a full 16 anymore. Maybe you need that insurance policy.
Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown.
I know. That's
they showed that they have him.
That's why I said folks will hate that. But anyway, so I'm just saying there is an opportunity to move LaShawn McCoy somewhere more so than the other back. So to me, I guess to answer that question, I'm just hoping that if I'm going to draft LaShawn McCoy, I'm drafting him much later into August towards the end of these fantasy drafts so I can get a really good perspective as to what's going on in that backfield.
No, let's say, playing conspiracy theorist here before we wrap up.
Right.
Leonard Fournette goes down. Jaguars are in the mix. There's that Doug Marrone connection from Buffalo.
Exactly. So there is opportunity there. So there you go. Anthony, anything else to say before we ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you're listening right now in podcast format, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Tuner FM, Google Podcasts, Amazon Alexa, and especially you Apple Podcast users or any user of a podcast platform that allows you the opportunity to leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review. Guys, it's important to us. We have had 4 or 5 5-star reviews. You guys wrote some great things about us, so I thank you. So please, if you're listening right now, leave us a 5-star rating and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. The more subscriptions, ratings, and reviews that we get, the more people we could reach. And in the end, we want to help each and every one of you win fantasy football championships, dominate your leagues, and absolutely positively crush the competition.
And that's an order.
We will maintain the culture of winning we've built here in the FF Faceoff for over 3 years since our inception and over 200 episodes. Mike, as always, take us home.
There you go, folks. It's going to be a nice weekend because I'm walking into the weekend already 2-0 on my 2019 fantasy football bets with Anthony Cervino. So thank you for that, Anthony. I appreciate that gift. My welcome back gift, those 2 bets. All right, but there you go. So, folks, we'll see you next week. And with what, Anthony? Do we want to tell them what we're doing next week yet, or we want to?
Let's might as well plug it now. On Tuesday, we are going to be doing a Scott Fishbowl 9 mock draft live on the show.
There you go. Spread the word. There you go. Spread the word to all, 1,200 teams? Spread the word to all of them. Tell them to come to the show and watch. So there you go. So, folks, thanks for watching. We'll check you next time. Cheers.
Embracing your complexities means rejecting anything that can harm who you are, like smoking cigarettes, which can damage nearly every part of your body. Tap the banner to see more. This free life. Freedom to be tobacco-free.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Let's talk credit card debt for a minute. If you feel you're carrying too much of it, you're not alone. The average household in the U.S. carries over $8,000 in credit card debt. Ready for some good news? With a cash-out refinance from Quicken Loans, you can quickly and easily put some of the equity in your home to good use by paying off a lot of that high-interest credit card debt. A great way to take cash out is with our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.125%. APR 4.22%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN to learn how taking cash out with a 30-year fixed mortgage might be the right solution for you. And for a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rates subject to change. Pay 0.88% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.